Awesome. Been great not to have to deal with the media for 3 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Missed y'all guys. I really did. I hope that the assistant coaches and players have treated y'all with the respect that y'all deserve and appreciate the coverage that y'all provide for our football program. And so good to have a post-spring wrap-up. You know, our spring goals were individual player development was number one, and I'm very pleased with the progress that our players made throughout the spring. I think it was really important for us to figure out where the transfers were when they got here, figure out where our early enrollees were, and then let our new coaches establish the baseline for the players at their position. And I thought we got really quality work for the time period that we had. You know, and I'm very excited for us. This is really just the starting point. Okay, now we know where we're at and how much more we can do and what are we capable of becoming for our team. You know, defensively, I felt like at the corner position, Dre Norwood really stepped up and made a big jump. You know, obviously losing Ennis and KAD, that was a position of need for us, and Dre has certainly solidified himself as a very good and capable all-SEC style of player at the cornerback position. You know, Toriano Pride came in, had his interception on Saturday, and I thought he competed at a high level very well for us all spring. You know, Jamarian Wayne moved over to that position during bowl practice and has looked very good. Not only does he contribute to us on special teams, you can tell that that experience on special teams, his physicality, tracking angles, and coverage showed up at the corner position. Nick DeLoach is a guy, you know, that this was his first spring practice for us at Mizzou, and I felt like really grew, competed, and I know that we're very excited about what he did at the safety position. Joseph Charleston and Caleb Flagg really stood out. Joe, his leadership, attention to detail, continuing to progress in his man-to-man skills. Caleb Flagg showed up as the MVP of the defensive MVP in the spring game, and very excited about what he can do. You know, at the linebacker position, Tristan Newsom, Corey Flagg, very excited about Brian Huff. He shows flashes of aggressiveness and feel like he can have a role for us in the coming season. You know, defensive end, Joe Moore and Austin Firestone are two guys that really grew in the year that they've been in residence with us. And I feel like those guys are more and more comfortable within the scheme. They're more and more comfortable with their coaches. And those guys stood out for their development. Obviously, the two transfers, Darius Smith shined bright in the spring game, and he's really flashed that way for us all spring. Zion Young didn't play that much in the spring game because he was battling an injury, but, man, we are very excited about what he can do and what his field-end position will be. Ja'Kai Lang really has grown into his body, continues to play extremely physical, and I think his growth is ahead of him. You know, at defensive tackle, Jalen Marshall, a guy that has kind of seen, okay, it's now my opportunity. Obviously, we're replacing three guys, brought in some transfers to compete, but Jalen Marshall really took a next step for us, and so we're very excited about that position and what he can contribute. You know, offensively, wide receiver-wise, Josh Manning, offensive MVP in the spring game. He continues to grow and get better. Tight end, I thought Tyler Stevens had his best spring. Obviously, Brett Norfleet and Jordan Harris are good players, but Tyler Stevens as a leader and as a player continues to shine. Offensive line, you know, I thought Mitch Walters, a guy who has played a lot of football for us, continues to find ways to contribute to our team and develop and improve. Logan Reichert competed at the right guard position. Javen Richardson really battled at the left tackle position. Obviously, we're excited about what Caden Green brings to us in our program. Running back, Nate Noel. Man, that guy really had a good spring. And not that the other guys didn't, but really came out of spring excited about what Nate's going to provide to us offensively. So, you know, those are just some of the guys that I'd like to mention. You know, obviously you have great players like Theo Weiss and Luther Burden and Brett Norfleet and Brady Cook and Dalen Carnell and Johnny Walker and Christian Williams. But these other guys really did exactly what we asked them to do, which is develop individually at their craft. And the exciting thing is they still have 5 more months to go before we start playing for wins and losses. The second part of spring was to identify the weaknesses and strengths of our schemes. And I think both sides of the ball are starting to have a better sense of what the identity for this year is going to look like. Obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, with the new coordinator, still implementing some of his fingerprints onto the schematic style of what death row in our 4-2-5 will look like. There was a little bit more odd structure, a little bit more simulated pressures, and those were all good things. Now it's about figuring out what do our guys do best, and I know we'll spend the next part of the 4 months really dialing in on that. Offensively, it's about getting playmaker touches. How specifically are we going to get Luther Burden involved in the offense? How specifically are we going to utilize Marquise Johnson's matchup and Theo Weiss's matchup on the perimeter, Brett Norfleet's matchup? How do we continue to let Brady Cook distribute the ball to the playmakers? And that's going to be an important part of what we do moving forward. And then number 3, the goal was to really it's just about us, unity over self. And that really begins now. It begins this week. Yesterday, as soon as we got done with practice, we all got on buses and rode together to go watch the St. Louis Blues game, to spend time together, have a different experience, watching other high-performance athletes compete, see what we can learn from that, but really spend time with each other. We're going to all be at Pro Day on Friday watching our brotherhood compete and supporting the brotherhood, and that's really where it begins. Wednesdays during April will be competition Wednesdays, where we'll divide up into 10 squadrons outside of our position groups and really compete against each other. So all in all, I thought it was a very effective and good spring, but the work really begins now. It really begins now that we know what is the baseline and capabilities of our team. Now what are we willing to sacrifice to accomplish the goals that we have? We came out of spring fairly healthy. The only surgery that is on the books as of right now, which we actually knew going into spring, was Brian Huff. He will repair an injury from high school. He'll actually have surgery tomorrow, and then he'll be back full participant by June. So that works out pretty good. I'm really excited about our team and what we're going to be. I'm obsessed with reaching our full potential. I'm not going to place limits or set the bar too high or too low on what it can be. I just know that we have a bright future and a big-time potential ahead of us, and need everybody, all of our fans, invested in our program at a high level for us to achieve what we want to achieve this year. As far as one other thing, I would like to just make an announcement, or not an announcement, but just Pro Day is Friday for us, and we'll have 16 players participating in Pro Day. Obviously, the 8 that were at the Combine and other 8. Very excited for these guys. I know they've worked really hard to get this opportunity, and look forward to utilizing the Stevens Family Indoor on Friday to give these guys the best opportunity for them to achieve their dream of playing at the next level. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Eli, there was a time you came out of spring football and knew exactly, basically, what your team was going to look like when it came back 4 months from now. That's obviously been different here with it,
Yep.
with the last few years. Does that change anything about the way you have to go about spring football at all?
Yeah, I think it changes the mindset of what spring is, and it's also an understanding that, once you've identified what your roster is coming out of spring, how do you reinforce your strength? How do you reinforce your strengths, and how do you figure out how to strengthen your weaknesses, right? And obviously, there is going to be another portal coming up, and we will be active in that portal time. Looking to see if there's something that makes sense for us to improve our football team. And I think that's just being a good steward of the University of Missouri football program. You want to utilize whatever the rules or system in place to maximize your advantage competitively. And so we'll utilize the portal as a competitive advantage for us. We're under scholarship, so we're not at a full 85. So we'll be active, and number one core value of University of Missouri football is always compete. The day we quit competing is the day we've accepted mediocrity. We will never do that as long as I'm the head football coach. every single player knows every day you got to be better today than you were yesterday, and that's an always compete mindset. So none of us are afraid of competition, and we'll be looking to add competition or add pieces that are available.
Any specific area, or is it see what's out there?
Well, we've already had one addition, that was committed to us just because of injury that occurred to Sam Horn. So very excited about that. I think that's going to be huge for us to be able to add that position of need. And there's some other ones that are out there. I don't see any just glaring weaknesses on our roster, but I always see opportunities for us to improve.
Eli, when you talk about creating that culture and kind of reinstilling that just about us mindset, just what's the process like of getting players to actually buy into it?
Oh, I think all of us at the University of Missouri have a certain level of chip on our shoulder. I think we kind of look for that in the recruiting process, and so I don't think it's hard to buy into that. I think what it's ultimately this day and age, it's about choosing unity over self, and understanding that it's about the team. And while we absolutely embrace every player's individuality, we're gonna make sure that the brotherhood's more important than anything else, and so I think that's easy to do for us.
You mentioned Mitchell Walters there. He played quite a bit in 2022.
Yeah.
What's different about him now than back then?
I think he's gotten stronger. He's better technique-wise. He's better fundamentally. He used to fight a lot in practice, Now he doesn't fight quite as much in practice. Now he focuses on just executing his job, which I think has been a huge addition. I think he understands what his role is. He is one of the most consistent players for us on our punt team. If they gave out awards for all Shield team, he would have been on it, him and Drake Heismeyer last year. But, there's just a security blanket knowing that Mitch Walters can play a lot of different positions at the line of scrimmage, but also the leadership that he presents to our team because he's consistent every day in how he approaches his opportunity here. Coach Russ has an acronym for an elite edge, energy, positive contagious energy. Mitch always brings positive energy. He's dialed into the details. He's got grit, stubborn refusal to quit. Played a lot in 22, didn't play quite as much as he wanted to last year, hasn't given in to that, keeps coming to work every day because he's emotionally consistent. And I think that's what's given him an edge and what will continue to give him an edge.
Coach, to that end, do you feel like you have the fifth starter for your offensive line somewhere in the locker room now?
I think we could, and I think we could have one come out of the portal too. I'm not going to close off any avenues that can make our team better. I think we have very capable players on our offensive line right now. I think Logan Reichert competed quite a bit at the starting right guard position. There were times where we moved Caden Green into left guard and let Javen take the snaps at starting left tackle. Mitch Walters has played guard in the past. So I think there's all kinds of different opportunities that could present themselves. And now it's just about getting those five guys to act as one. That's really the thing that we're going to need to see. At this time last year, I didn't have an offensive line coach. Okay? Y'all remember that? Day before the spring game, after spring break, we announced the new offensive line coach, and Brandon took a unit, formed it into a cohesive unit that was a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award, and obviously probably the most improved unit on our football team. So where we're at now is not where we're going to be at the start of the season, and that's really for every position on our team. Where we're at now is just where we're at right now, and where we're going to be in 5 months is what I'm really, really excited about. So whether that's one of the guys in the room or is there, potential to add somebody, yeah, there's always that potential.
Having a spring where you got all the coaches in the building.
Hopefully. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch.
And you basically say it's the best player available situation in the portal. How does that kind of change your job going into the offseason as far as things you have to do? Is it less on your plate or is it just you can focus on different things now?
To me, it's everything's still on your plate because you have to be reactive to whatever situation can occur. I think for me right now, it's about focusing on what putting my attention on what is important to us today, right? What are the fires that we have to put out today? And if there's no fires today, how do we continue to aggressively pursue our vision for playing for championships? And right now that's about understanding what we're capable of, but more importantly, what are we willing to do in order to reach our capabilities.
You said on an interview last night with Josh, you were talking about having to learn specific parts of every different job, right? How every place is different.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you can explain kind of what you had to learn about here and any specifics, and how long do you feel like it took you to embrace what's different about here than maybe some other places?
Yeah,
Not embrace, but-
yeah, well, no, you have to embrace for sure. I think that's a great question. I think really when I look back at that, it's really, I tried to take the blueprint of what was successful for me at Appalachian State and apply it to the University of Missouri, and that didn't work because it's different places, there was a different culture in place, there was a different set of realities that were in place, there were different players in the locker room, different mentalities of what football was. And so it took me a little bit of time to realize that oh wait, what I did there, the way I communicated, the way I acted, the way we led there isn't exactly the same way of how it's going to fit here. As far as some of the realities of Mizzou that I had to embrace, obviously I knew, and was stated even in my opening press conferences, I knew we had to recruit the state of Missouri better than we ever have. And I tried to do that and still try to do that to this, even being in St. Louis yesterday, embracing the past with Coach Pinkel and understanding his significance to our program, and even the past players that are significant to our program. I think we've done a really good job of that. But understanding different dynamics. There is a different dynamic to the University of Missouri with sharing the state with professional sports teams, and how do we win from within first? How do we win within the first 100 miles of Columbia to get our fans in the stands first, and then how do we go and attract the fans from St. Louis and Kansas City and Springfield and the Boot Hill, and understanding that there's really 7 different geographic regions in the state of Missouri. It's really not, there's 7 unique places in this state, and they're all different. You have to reach each one in a little bit different manner. Understanding that rural Missouri is really the spirit of Missouri. Understanding that you can't lump Kansas City and St. Louis into one. They're 2 distinctly different places and have a little bit of a sibling rivalry with each other, and that's part of it. I have a little bit of a sibling rivalry with my siblings. So, but how do we all come together to unite to represent this state in a real way? And I think when we won the Cotton Bowl, and whether you fly out of Kansas City right now, or you fly out of St. Louis, or you fly out of Columbia, every one of the shops has Missouri gear, and that hasn't always been the case when I've been here. And so that signals to me progress in what we're trying to accomplish. Pride in our state, pride in the state university, pride in the flagship football program. So just learning those different things. Those are different nuances that you just don't know when you step foot into the ground. You step foot here, you think, oh shoot, we're just going to win. It's hard to win. It takes a lot of things to come together. It takes a lot of people working together, and slowly but surely we're doing that. We had a saying all spring, little by little, little becomes a lot. I feel like that's kind of, it resonates with me, because there were daily battles that we had to win that have, little by little, you start looking back and you say, okay, it's coming together in a big way now.
Given that amount of progress you feel like you've made in the last 4 years, how much more is there to make, and what's the next step look like?
Yeah, you're never satisfied with where you're at. You're always looking for the future. Obviously, I've made it known a priority for us is what comes next with the North End Zone, and how does that come together, and what's the next step for us in making our stadium. I want to be careful with how I choose my words, but making our stadium relevant in the SEC and competitive within the SEC, and I think that's really the next step for our program. I haven't been shy about saying that I don't think that we're 11-2 Cotton Bowl champs without the Stevens Family Indoor Facility. I think that was a big part of our team's reaching its full potential, and I'm appreciative that in 2020 that the board and the president were able to get that process started, and it took the donor base stepping up and raising the $35 million that it took. Now we're going to ask them to do something a lot bigger and a lot more significant for our university and for our football program. And I know there's people out there that can. We've already had one generous donor come forward and get the project started. And now it's going to be about the board and the president figuring out what the final plan looks like. And then once it's presented, it's going to be about our fan base and donors coming, okay, we can do a little bit more. We can do a little bit more. And you know, I think we've really recruited at a high level. I think you can see this isn't like a program that man, we had a big season and then the next year you're rebuilding. You know, we had a big season last year, and next year the expectation and the standard is that we're shooting for that same platform. And if you look at the way our roster is built, it seems like we can stay at that sustained success for a while. And so that's what we're continuing to do. You know, we've had a lot of really, really good players on campus the last 4 weeks. We got some really good players on campus today. And it's about us continuing to recruit at this level and maintain this standard of excellence and performance. And so, you know, long answer short, you know, for us next is about this stadium progression and what we're doing there.
You know, I remember you saying last year that you've never had this much fun coaching football, and then came home today saying you're obsessed with reaching the potential of this team. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. Is that, you know, is it just one way or the other?
Yeah, I think when you are, well, I hate to get philosophical. I'm like a life coach here because I'm just a football coach, but I think when you're fully engaged in what your purpose is in life, you have a lot of fun. You find fulfillment in doing that every day, and I think that's where I'm at right now. I feel like I'm in a really good rhythm of finding fulfillment in my job on a day-to-day basis, finding fulfillment in my my family life, interactions with my family, with where they're at. It doesn't mean we don't have adversity. It doesn't mean you don't have bad days, but there's a fulfillment knowing that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I feel comfortable with where that is. And absolutely, I'm obsessed with trying to reach our full potential. And to me, I'm a driven person. When I have goals in front of me is when I feel the most fulfilled with what I'm trying to do on a day-to-day basis. So between trying to win a lot of football games and build a north end zone, my plate's full right now.
Coach, I'll throw it in real quick.
Yeah.
Candace and Cody, they had a couple things happen to them at the combine that kind of limited what they could do. How do they feel right now going into Friday?
Yeah, I'm going to let those guys. They've all been here. They're all working. They're all getting treatment. They've all been practicing and testing, but I don't want to speak for them. They have agents and representatives that can handle their conversations
Gary Binkle
or updates.
always said that Don James told him when your program's going to take the next level is when you start hearing guys' name called in the NFL draft. How big is it for your program to have the chance to have 7, 8, 9 guys? I mean, when you talk to these kids that are coming in, how big a part of it is that?
I think it's a huge part of, again, we talk about in our program, Chasing Two Dreams, a life with football and a life outside of the game. It's going to be the 20th straight year that Missouri has had a player drafted. But now to have those conversations with potential first-round draft picks, potential breaking the record of the total number of draft picks that Mizzou's had in any one year, that's a different level. And that's a different conversation when you add all the different accomplishments from last year and how that could continue to carry over, with also the name recognition for the players that are coming back, with the Luther Burdens, the Brady Cooks, the Armand Mimbus, the Theo Weises, the Christian Williams, Dalen Carnells. You know, those guys obviously have bright futures ahead of them too. So that combination gets people really excited. It's about not only have you developed players, but it's not just a flash in the pan. It looks like a continual progress. You also have a true freshman All-American, Brett Norfleet, who's going into his true sophomore year that continues to progress at a high level.
You look at this draft class specifically and some of the prospects in there. Like Chris came in here as a wide receiver and developed one of the top cornerback prospects, and just not a lot of them came in as blue chip guys. So what do you think their story specifically would say about your coaching staff's ability to develop talent?
Yeah, obviously that will be the spin on it, is that obviously that we're a developmental program, and that obviously Coach Russell, I think, is instrumental in our success as an organization and as a program. What he does, not only from a mental performance training, but from an athletic performance training, cannot be undersold. I mean, Ryan Russell is the foundation of this program, and I think he deserves all the credit in the world. But I do also think that it is a direct reflection of those players' internal motivation to be successful. And we just were able to get a little bit out of them. But those guys, Chris Abrams drained. I mean, you talk about a guy with a competitive spirit and a stubborn refusal to quit. Obviously, one of my first viral moments here was Ennis Rakestraw committing and going crazy. And if you look back at all the different comments that people made about my reaction and 3-star this and blah, 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 to see what Ennis Rakestraw has become, you'd like to go back and just tag tweet every one of them, right? But you don't. Darius Robinson, Tyron Hopper, Cody Schrader, Realist George, Jaden Jernigan, Javon Foster, Harrison Mevis, all of those guys, every one of them, Xavier Delgado, all of those guys' story is unique, and it's going to be great for all of them to get their opportunity. But it's less about me, and it's less about our organization, and it's more about them and their ability to achieve at a high level and refuse to give in to disappointment or adversity.
Coach, with this proposed June signing day that's been floated out there, seeing some high school coaches going against that. I know you've talked about how flawed December is for college coaches. Just what's kind of the view as a college coach of that particular issue?
Well, my view is I support high school coaches. I've been a high school football coach. I think it was awesome that really the last week, I think you saw Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Florida, Missouri, Louisiana, Tennessee all come out as high school coaches and say that they're against the June signing period. Again, don't we need to ask the people that it directly affects the most what their opinion is before we make decisions? And the high school coaches have spoken. I think it would be irresponsible for us to do something that directly counters what those organizations say. I personally think that for the same reasons that the Missouri High School Football Association said, I think it moves up the calendar too quickly. I think this day and age, when you've already sped up recruiting a whole lot, I think it doesn't make sense. I think you could, anytime you move something up, we moved it to December. This early enrollees really became popular. Guys are now no longer finishing their senior years, which is some of the best times of young men's lives. Are you going to start having reclassification? Of course you are, because now it's, you're going to start, I'm just not going to get into that, but you're going to have early enrollees. You could have potential for opt-outs. There's obviously going to be coaching changes and decision changes, so you're going to have somebody committed, then they're going to have to get out of NLIs, and then it just opens up a whole new can of worms. So for me, the proposal that was submitted by the SEC, I think, makes the most sense, which is just to move the December signing to the first Wednesday in December, create December as a dead period for recruiting, which then will allow the players will enter the transfer portal, but there won't be this necessity to go travel to see all these places because it's dead. So then they'll get to go in January once the seasons are completed. That will only unaffect about 4 teams, because it looks to me like the semifinals of the playoff, I believe, or not the quarterfinals are done the first week in January. And so really there's only 4 teams that are continuing to play, and so everybody's seasons will have concluded by teams when teams are starting to lose people to travel. So I think that makes the most sense. You've created some space. You've created an opportunity for people to finish their seasons and focus on their teams. And it still allows, if somebody doesn't want to sign in December, that they still have the February signing date.
I think all the changes we've talked about with you in the last 4 years, your answer has always basically been, here's what I think, but whatever it is, I'm I'm gonna do the best I can
Yeah.
in this situation, where, how important is that mindset of, yeah, there are things I'd like, but hey, it is what it is, and I've gotta turn it into the best case it can be for Missouri.
Well, ultimately, that's my job, right? Ultimately, my job is to not find excuses, is to find a way. And that's always been my mindset. That's going to be the people that we hire in this organization's mindset, is whatever it takes and whatever we're going to find a way. So, first season here, we had COVID, we found a way. And then we introduced NIL and the transfer portal, and we found a way to utilize it to our success. And I can't thank the legislation for adopting NIL rules that a lot of other states are now copying. I can't thank our fans enough for being proactive in NIL. And I can't thank our administration enough for being open-minded to trying to pivot to allow us to have success. But whatever it is, if it's June, we'll make it work. But and if it's December, we'll make it work. Whatever the rules are, I'm not going to throw up my hands and quit. I'm going to find a way.